I wasn't supposed to hear it. That's what I keep telling myself, even now. If I just stayed in bed that Thursday night, if I hadn't gotten up for water, if the pipes hadn't been acting up, so I padded downstairs in my slippers instead of using the bathroom upstairs, maybe. I could have lived the rest of my life not knowing, but I did hear it. The house was dark except for the blue glow seeping from under Daniel's office door. It was past midnight. I remember that because I'd been watching the clock for hours, counting sheep, then counting regrets, then finally giving up on sleep altogether. My mouth was dry, that papery feeling you get when you're 68 and on too many medications. I was halfway down the stairs when I heard his voice. "Mom's getting worse. We can't keep doing this." I froze. The wooden step beneath my foot creaked, but the sound was swallowed by the hum of the refrigerator and the low murmur of conversation coming from behind that door. A woman's voice responded, "Jessica, my daughter-in-law. I know, honey. I know it's hard. It's not just hard. It's impossible. She can't be alone anymore, and we can't afford." Daniel's voice cracked, and there was a long pause. "We need to make a decision, soon." I should have announced myself, cleared my throat, knocked, something. But my feet had become part of the staircase, roots growing down through the carpet into the foundation, my late husband. Tom and I had poured 43 years ago when we'd built this house with our own hands and borrowed money. "What are you thinking?" Jessica asked, her voice gentle in that way that makes hard things easier to say. "There's a place, about an hour north. It's it's clean, decent. They have activities and nurses on staff." I looked into the costs and with her social security and if we sell this house. The rest of his words dissolved into static in my ears. Sell this house where I'd brought Daniel home from the hospital, where he'd taken his first steps in the kitchen while I was making meatloaf, where Tom had died in our bedroom upstairs with me holding his hand and Daniel crying at the foot of the bed. This house that was supposed to be mine until I didn't need it anymore. What if she says no? Jessica asked. She won't have a choice. Daniel's voice was firm now, decided. "Look, I love her. You know, I do. But she's becoming a danger to herself. Last week she left the stove on. Yesterday she couldn't remember if she'd taken her pills. And the doctor said it's only going to get worse." I backed up one step, then another. My hand found the railing, and I gripped it hard enough that my arthritic knuckles screamed. But that pain was nothing compared to the hollow feeling opening up in my chest, becoming a danger to myself. It's only going to get worse. I made it back to my bedroom without breathing. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid in the darkness. The next morning, I made blueberry pancakes. Daniel came down at 7:30, tie already knotted, briefcase in hand. He stopped when he saw me at the stove, spatula in hand, the kitchen filled with the smell of butter and vanilla. "Morning, Mom." He bent to kiss my cheek, but I caught something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or pity. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep." I flipped a pancake, watching the golden surface bubble. "Thought you might want a real breakfast before work." "You didn't have to, I know." I set a plate in front of him. The pancakes perfectly round and golden, just the way he'd liked them since he was 7 years old and insisted that only circles tasted good. But I wanted to. He ate in silence while I washed the mixing bowl. Through the window above the sink, I could see my garden, the roses Tom had planted for our 25th anniversary, now overgrown and wild. I'd stopped being able to tend them properly 2 years ago, after the first stroke. The small one that everyone said was a warning. "Mom?" Daniel's voice was careful. "Are you okay?" I turned, drying my hands on a dishcloth. "Of course, sweetheart." "Why? You just seem, I don't know, quiet." I smiled. The same smile I'd given him every time he'd skinned his knee or broken his heart or failed a test he'd studied so hard for. The smile that said everything would be fine, even when I wasn't sure it would be. Just tired, I said. Like I said, couldn't sleep. He nodded, but he watched me a moment longer before checking his watch. I've got to run. Big presentation this morning. I know. You told me yesterday. I had the satisfaction of seeing surprise flicker across his face. My memory wasn't as bad as he thought. Not yet, anyway. After he left, I stood in the quiet kitchen and let the smile fall away. Then I went upstairs to my bedroom, pulled out the laptop Daniel had given me 3 Christmases ago so we can video chat, Mom, and opened Google. I typed, "How to prove you're not losing your mind." Then I deleted and typed, "Memory exercises for seniors." Then I deleted that too and just stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, I typed, "How to start over at 6-8 dot." The first thing I did was make a list dot not on paper could be found. Read used as evidence of my instability. I made it in my head. The way I used to memorize grocery lists when Daniel was little, and I was too proud to carry one of those cards with a list clipped to it like the other housewives. 1. Take my medications on time, every time. No mistakes. 2. Stop leaving things on. Check the stove, the coffee pot, the curling iron I hadn't used in 3 years but might someday. 3. Exercise my mind. Puzzles, books, conversations. Prove I was still here, still present, still me. 4. Don't tell Daniel what I'd heard. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 5. Figure out who I was without this house. Without the life I'd built here, because maybe, and this thought came to me at 3 a.m. on the 3rd sleepless night after I'd overheard that conversation, maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I was becoming someone who needed more than I could provide for myself. Maybe the kindest thing I could do was let him put me somewhere safe before I burned the house down or wandered into traffic or forgot my own name. But I wasn't ready to be that person yet, so I made another list. Things I've always wanted to do, It was harder than the first one. When you're young, you have dreams that stretch out like highways to the horizon. When you're my age, you realize most of those roads have been closed for construction, or you took a different exit, or you just plain ran out of gas. But I tried, learned to paint. Tom had always said I had an eye for color. Take a cooking class. I've been making the same 15 meals for 45 years. Visit the ocean. I'd never seen it. Not once. How was that possible? Make a friend who wasn't related to me or in my Bible study group. Be interesting. That last one I wrote down on paper in the notebook I kept beside my bed. Then I underlined it twice. The community college was a 30-minute bus ride from the house. I hadn't been on a bus since 1987, when my car was in the shop and I'd had to get to Daniel's school play. Everything looked different through the big windows, the world moving past like I was watching it on television. Not part of it, but I was part of it now. The art class was called Painting for Beginners. Discover your inner artist. It was held on Tuesday and Thursday mornings in a room that smelled like turpentine and possibility. There were 12 of us, mostly women, mostly my age or older. One man in the back who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The instructor was young, maybe 30, with paint-splattered overalls and hair like a sunset. Her name was Riley, and she smiled at me like I was exactly who she'd been hoping would walk through that door. "First time?" she asked. "First time," I confirmed, setting down the supply bag I'd bought at the craft store with money from my secret account. The account Tom had made me promise to keep, just for me. "In case you ever need to leave," he'd said. I thought it was the saddest thing I'd ever heard. Now I understood it was love. Perfect. Riley handed me a canvas, a palette, brushes. "Today we're painting what home feels like. Not what it looks like, what it feels like." Don't think too hard. Just let your hands remember. I stared at the blank canvas for 20 minutes. What did home feel like? It felt like Tom's hand on the small of my back when we danced in the kitchen with no music playing. It felt like Daniel's sleepy weight against my shoulder when he'd been small enough to carry. It felt like Sunday mornings and the crossword puzzle and coffee. That was always a little too strong because Tom could never get the measurements right. It felt like something I was losing or had already lost, or maybe never really had in the first place. My hand moved before my brain caught up. Colors appeared on the canvas, blues and golds and soft greens. Not a house. Not anything recognizable. Just ... Feeling made visible when the class ended. Riley stopped by my easel. That's beautiful, she said quietly. It's a mess, I said. But I didn't mean it. It's a beginning, she corrected. I didn't tell Daniel about the class. I also didn't tell him about the yoga class one. Started on Mondays and Wednesdays at the senior center. Gentle stretching for active agers. I hated the euphemism, but loved the way my body felt after. Loose and humming. I didn't tell him about the book club I joined at the library, where we read authors I'd never heard of and had discussions that sometimes got heated enough that Margaret, what's her name, would storm out, only to come back the next week ready to fight about pronouns or plot holes or why the author really killed off that character. I didn't tell him about Frances. Frances was 72 and had been a district attorney before she retired. She had short silver hair and expensive scarves and a laugh that sounded like music if music could be sharp. We'd met in the yoga class when she'd leaned over during Warrior 2 and whispered, "If this is gentle, I'd hate to see aggressive." We'd gotten coffee after, then lunch. Then we'd started meeting twice a week at the cafe on Main Street where they made sandwiches with ingredients I'd never heard of and charged prices that made me wince. But Frances always paid, waving away my protests. I had a career, she said. You raised a son. We both earned our money, just differently. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. About Tom and how much I still missed him. About Daniel and the conversation I'd overheard. About feeling like I was disappearing one memory at a time, one day at a time. So don't disappear, Frances said like it was simple. Appear, bigger, brighter, so bright they can't help but see you. I'm 68 years old. I'm not going to suddenly what? Be interesting? Be vital? Be alive? She leaned across the table, her eyes fierce behind her glasses. You're not dead yet, Helen. Stop auditioning for the role. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m., researching volunteer opportunities. By dawn, I'd applied to 3. Daniel noticed something was different on a Saturday in October. I'd just gotten home from a shift at the hospital, nothing medical. Just greeting people at the information desk, directing them to the right departments, offering tissues to the ones who were crying. Simple work, but it made me feel useful. Needed . He was sitting at my kitchen table when I walked in. And something about his posture reminded me of when he'd been 16, and I'd caught him sneaking home at dawn. Where were you? He asked. Out, I said, setting down my purse. Is that allowed? Of course it's allowed. Mom, I've been calling you for 3 hours. Your phone was going straight to voicemail. I pulled my cell phone from my purse. Dead battery. Sorry, I forgot to charge it last night. You forgot. He said it like it was evidence. Yes, Daniel. I forgot. Like you've never forgotten to charge your phone. That's different. Why? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Ran his hands through his hair the way he did when he was frustrated. Where were you, really? I could have told him. Could have explained about the hospital, the art classes, the yoga, Frances. Could have shown him that I was more than he thought I was, bigger than the small space he'd started keeping for me in his mind. Instead, I said, I don't have to report my whereabouts to you. I'm your mother, not your child. His face did something complicated. I know that, but you're also... Mom, we need to talk. About what? About the future. Your future. You can't keep living alone in this big house, refusing help, pretending everything is fine when it's not. What's not fine? I kept my voice level, but my heart was hammering. You're forgetting things. Small things, but they add up. And you're isolated here. All your friends are gone or moved away. Dad's gone. You barely see anyone except me and Jessica. That's not true. Isn't it? He leaned forward. Name one friend you've seen this week. Frances. The name came out sharp as a blade. I had lunch with Frances on Tuesday and coffee with her yesterday. Daniel blinked. Who's Frances? A friend. I've never heard you mention a Frances. Maybe, I said carefully, you haven't been listening. The silence that followed was thick enough to suffocate in. Finally, Daniel stood up. I'm worried about you, he said. That's all this is. I love you, and I'm worried, and I don't know how to help you if you won't let me. I don't need help. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't quite true. I needed help. Everyone needs help sometimes. What I didn't need was to be managed, handled, dealt with like a problem that required a solution. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, watching the light change through the windows. Then I picked up my phone, charged it, and called Frances. I think I'm ready, I said when she answered. Ready for what? To stop being invisible. The plan came together over the next 2 months. It wasn't a plan born from anger or spite. It was a plan born from something quieter and more determined, the simple desire to matter, to be seen, to prove that I was still a whole person, not just a fragmented collection of memories and pills and worries. First, I got my finances in order. Tom's life insurance, my social security, the small savings account that had been sitting untouched for years. I tallied it all up. Met with a financial advisor who treated me like I had a brain in my head instead of cotton wool. Put systems in place. Second, I saw a doctor. Not my regular doctor who'd known me for 30 years and saw only the woman I used to be. A new doctor, young and thorough, who ran tests and asked questions and finally said, your memory issues are mild and consistent with normal aging. You're managing your conditions well. There's no reason you can't continue living independently with some support systems in place. I had him write it down. Sign it. Put it on official letterhead. Third, I joined a grief support group for widows. Not because I thought it would help. I'd been widowed for 5 years and thought I'd done my grieving, but because I wanted to understand something. I wanted to understand if what I was feeling was loss or something else. It turned out to be both. I feel erased, I said in week 3 when it was my turn to share. My husband died and I became a widow. My son grew up and I became someone who used to be needed. I'm standing right here, but I'm starting to wonder if anyone sees me at all. A woman across the circle, Doris, 75, with a late husband who'd been a plumber, nodded so hard her whole body shook. Like we're ghosts, she said, haunting our own lives. Yes, I breathed. Exactly like that. So what do we do? Another woman asked. Patricia, 81, sharp as a tack. How do we come back? We don't come back, I said slowly, working it out as I spoke. We go forward. We become something new. On Christmas Eve, Daniel and Jessica came over for dinner. I'd spent 3 days preparing. Not the meal that took one day. The other 2 days I spent preparing myself. I wore the new dress I bought, deep blue like the ocean I still hadn't seen. I'd had my hair done, not at the cheap place I'd been going to for decades, but at the salon downtown, where they gave you wine and called you by your first name. I even put on makeup, real makeup, Not just the powder and lipstick that had been my uniform for 40 years. When Daniel walked in and saw me, he stopped. Mom, you look ... different? I suggested. Beautiful, Jessica finished. She smiled at me, and I wondered not for the first time what she really thought about everything. If she'd been pushing Daniel toward the nursing home or holding him back. If she saw me as a burden or just someone who'd earned a little peace, dinner was not the meal they expected. I'd taken a French cooking class, another thing I hadn't mentioned, and I served coq au vin and roasted vegetables and a chocolate souffle that actually rose. We ate by candlelight, and I told them stories about my classes, my volunteering, my friends. Daniel listened with an expression I couldn't quite read. After dessert, after Jessica had excused herself to take a phone call, he said, "You've been busy." I have. Why didn't you tell me? I considered the question. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought it was just another sign that I was losing touch with reality? He flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? I kept my voice gentle. Daniel, I heard you. That night in October, actually in September, I heard you talking to Jessica about putting me in a home, about selling this house. The color drained from his face. Mom, let me finish. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was bigger than I remembered, stronger, but I could still feel the little boy inside it. You weren't wrong to worry. I was struggling. I was lonely. I was letting myself fade because it seemed easier than fighting to stay visible. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. You were trying to protect me. But here's what I need you to understand. I don't need to be protected from life. I need to live it. Whatever time I have left, 5 years, 10 years, 20, if I'm lucky, I want to spend it being me. Not a smaller, quieter, safer version. Just me. Tears were streaming down his face now, and I reached up to wipe them away like I'd done 1,000 times before. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud, I smiled. Look at me. I'm your mother, and I'm 68 years old, and I just learned how to make souffle. I have friends and hobbies and a volunteer job. I take 3 buses to get to my art class because I sold my car and I'm saving for something big. What are you saving for? A trip, I said. To the ocean. Francis and I are going in April, 2 weeks on the Oregon coast. I've never seen the Pacific. He stared at me like I'd told him I was planning to climb Everest. You don't need this house, I continued. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I do need to know that when the time comes, and it will come, I'm not naive. You'll ask me what I want. You'll include me in the decisions about my life. Can you promise me that? Yes, he said immediately. God, yes. I promise. Jessica came back then, and we had coffee and talked about later things. But something had shifted, settled, found its level. When they left, Daniel hugged me harder than he had in years. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. After they drove away, I cleaned up the kitchen slowly, taking my time. Through the window, I could see my wild, overgrown garden covered in snow. In the spring, Francis and I were going to tackle it together. She said she'd always wanted to learn about roses. I thought about the nursing home Daniel had researched. The clean rooms and activity schedules and nurses on staff. Maybe someday I'd need a place like that. Maybe someday I'd be grateful for it, but not yet. Not while I still had paintings to finish and meals to cook and ocean to see ... not while I was still becoming whoever I was supposed to be next ... the thing nobody tells you about getting old is that you don't feel different inside. You look in the mirror and see your mother staring back, or your grandmother, and you think, who is that? Because inside, you're still every age you've ever been. You're still the girl who climbed trees, and the young woman who fell in love, and mother who stayed up all night with a sick child. You're all of it at once? A whole lifetime contained in a body that started to betray you, with its creaking joints and failing memory and skin like crepe paper. But here's what they also don't tell you. That body is still yours. That life is still yours. And you get to decide what you do with whatever time is left. I decided to live. The art class taught me that I could create beauty out of nothing but color and canvas and intention. The yoga taught me that my body, even at 68, could still be strong and flexible in mine. The volunteering taught me that I still had something to offer the world, even if it was just a kind word or a box of tissues at the right moment. And Francis taught me that friendship doesn't have an expiration date, that you can meet someone at 72 and 68 and still feel like you've known them forever, that it's never too late to let someone see you, really see you, and decide you're worth knowing. April came with rain and early flowers. Francis picked me up at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Her car packed with suitcases and snacks and a road trip playlist that made me laugh. What do you know about Fleetwood Mac? I'd asked. Everything, she'd replied. I was young in the 70s. Daniel came out to say goodbye. He hugged me for a long time. You have your medications? He asked. Yes. And your phone charger? Yes. And you'll call when you get there? Yes, Daniel. I cupped his face in my hands. I'll be fine. Better than fine. I know, he said, but his eyes were wet. I'm really proud of you, Mom. That was the moment I knew I'd done it. I'd stopped being invisible. I'd become someone he saw not as a problem or a responsibility, but as a whole person with dreams and desires and a future that belonged to me. The drive took 2 days. We stopped at roadside attractions and diners with questionable health ratings and one spectacular museum about UFOs that Francis insisted we tour. We laughed until our stomachs hurt and sang off-key and talked about everything and nothing. And then, on the morning of the 3rd day, we crested a hill and there was the Pacific Ocean. I'd seen it in pictures, of course, in movies and magazines and the screensaver on my laptop. But nothing prepared me for the size of it, the way it stretched out to the horizon like the edge of the world. Nothing prepared me for the sound, that constant rush and roar like breathing. Nothing prepared me for the smell of salt and seaweed and something wild and ancient. Francis pulled over at a beach access point. We got out of the car and I walked down to the water's edge. The sand was cool beneath my feet. The wind whipped my hair around my face. I stood there for a long time, just watching the waves. What are you thinking? Francis asked, coming up beside me. I thought about how to answer. About Tom and Daniel and the life I'd built in that house I thought I'd never leave. About the person I'd been and the person I was becoming. About all the years I'd thought were behind me and all the years that might still lie ahead. I'm thinking, I said finally, that it's never too late. For what? For anything. We stayed at the beach for an hour, then 2. We collected shells and let the cold water rush over our ankles and took pictures on Francis's phone that came out blurry because we were laughing too hard to hold still. And I thought about Daniel. Back home, maybe wondering if he'd made the right choice letting me go. Maybe worrying that this was the beginning of me slipping away entirely, but I wasn't. Slipping away, I was right. Here, present, alive, more myself than I'd been in. Years. We stayed in Oregon for 12 days. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of the ocean. Every evening, I fell asleep to it. In between, Francis and I explored tide pools and hiking trails and little towns with art galleries and bookstores. We ate fresh crab and drank wine on the balcony of our rental house and talked about our lives, the parts that had been beautiful and the parts that had been hard and the parts we were still writing on the last night. Francis said, I think you should move out here. I laughed. That's crazy. Is it? What's keeping you in town, Daniel? He's a grown man with his own life. The house? It's just a building. It's my home. No, she said gently. It was your home. Now it's just the place you're afraid to leave. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend my attachment to that house, to the life I'd built there. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the ocean, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. What was keeping me there? The memories? I could carry those with me. The fear of change? That was the worst possible reason to stay anywhere. Daniel would be okay. Maybe he'd even be relieved to have his mother living her own life instead of waiting for him to live it for her. I didn't move to Oregon. Not right away, anyway. But when I got home, I put the house on the market. Daniel found out when I told him. Sitting at that same kitchen table where I'd overheard him planning my future without me. You're selling? His voice was flat with shock. I am, but why? Where will you go? I'm not sure yet. Maybe Oregon, maybe somewhere else. I'm looking at a few places smaller, easier to maintain. Somewhere near the water. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. This house is too big for just me, and every room is full of ghosts, good ghosts, but ghosts all the same. It's time for someone else to fill it with new memories. I thought you'd never leave this house. So did I admitted. Turns out I thought a lot of things about myself that weren't true. I thought I was done growing, done changing, done becoming. But I'm not done. Not yet. He was quiet for a long time. Then, can I say something without you getting mad? You can say anything. Last year when I was planning to... When Jessica and I were talking about care facilities, I wasn't seeing you. I was seeing this idea I had of who you were supposed to be at this stage of life. Someone who needed taking care of. Someone whose best days were behind her, I know. But I was wrong. Your best days aren't behind you. They're right now. And watching you these past few months, the art classes and the volunteering and the trip, it's been like watching you come back to life. Like you were disappearing and now you're not. His voice cracked. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I got up and wrapped my arms around him. This son who'd been my whole world for so long that I'd forgotten I was allowed to have a world of my own. You see me now, I said. That's what matters. The house sold in 3 weeks, to a young couple with a baby on the way. They walked through the rooms and talked about their plans, knocking down this wall, updating that bathroom, turning Tom's old office into a nursery. I smiled and nodded and felt absolutely nothing. It was just a building now. The life that had made it home was something I carried inside me, and I was taking it somewhere new. I bought a condo 45 minutes outside Portland. 2 bedrooms, a balcony that faced west toward the ocean I couldn't quite see but knew was there. Francis helped me move, and Daniel flew out to help me unpack. This is nice, Mom, he said, looking around at the clean white walls and the big windows and the space that was all mine. Really nice. It is, I agreed. You're really doing it. Starting over. Not starting over, I corrected. Starting new. There's a difference. He hugged me before he left. Held on tight like he used to when he was small and afraid of the dark. I'm glad you're my mom, he whispered. I'm glad you're my son. That was 8 months ago. Now it's winter again. And I'm sitting on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, drinking coffee that's still a little too strong because I never did learn Tom's trick. The rain is coming down steady, and somewhere beyond the trees and the hills, the ocean is breathing. I've been here long enough now that I have routines. Art class on Tuesday mornings, a new class with a new teacher, but the same feeling of creation, of making something beautiful from nothing. Yoga on Wednesday afternoons at the studio down the street. Friday dinners with Frances and a group of women we've collected. All of us past 60, all of us refusing to be invisible. I volunteer at a literacy center, teaching adults to read. Last week, a woman my age read her first full sentence and cried. I cried too. Daniel calls every Sunday. We video chat and he shows me pictures of his life, the promotion he got, the vacation he and Jessica are planning, the garden he planted in his backyard. He asks about my life too, really asks, and listens to my answers. You seem happy, he said last week. I am, I told him. And I meant it. There are hard days, of course. Days when my knees ache and my memory slips and I forget why I walked into a room. Days when I miss Tom so much it feels like a physical weight in my chest. Days when I wonder if I made a mistake, if I should have just accepted the easy path Daniel had tried to give me. But then I remember, easy isn't the same as right. Safe isn't the same as alive. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, standing on those stairs in the dark, hearing her son plan her future without her. I think about how small I felt, how erased, and I think about the woman I am now. Still 68, still imperfect, still aging with all the indignities and challenges that entails, but visible, present, here, not waiting to be taken care of, but taking care of myself and others. Not haunting my own life, but living it fully, messily, courageously. I became someone Daniel didn't expect. But more importantly, I became someone I didn't expect. I became someone who wasn't done yet. And on my best days, when the sun breaks through the rain and lights up the world like a promise, I look in the mirror and see not my mother or grandmother staring back, but myself. Whole and complete and enough. Still becoming. Still here. Still me. The ocean is out there somewhere, breathing its ancient rhythm. And I'm here, breathing mine, and that's enough. More than enough. It's everything.